Hello, guys, and welcome to this new episode of the Unexplainable podcast. Throughout history, some of the brightest elements, those capable of changing the fate of humanity, disappeared into thin air. No clues, no logical explanation. It's just tragic coincidences. Or is there a dark shadow moving behind the scenes of these enigmatic events? Today I will talk about the most disturbing disappearances of great inventors of our times. Brilliant men, visionaries, who completely disappeared under circumstances that are not at all clear. What were they about to reveal? Who wanted to silence them? And above all, what did they discover that was so shocking that they were forced into silence forever? So here is the dark mystery behind the disappearance of the famous inventors. Nikola, T-E-S-L-A. Let's start with one of the most popular characters ever. At the start of the 20th century, as technology began radically transforming the world, a figure, as brilliant as it was mysterious, emerged, a man who seemed almost to belong to a distant future. This visionary, capable not only of imagining, but also of creating revolutionary inventions that the society of his time was not ready to understand or accept. His name was Nikola Tesla. Born in 1856 in a small Austro-Hungarian village, he came from what is now Croatia. From a young age, he showed remarkable intelligence and a nearly superhuman ability to visualize complex concepts mentally without sketches or models. This ability allowed him to develop incredible ideas long before official science was ready to support them. At 28, he immigrated to the United States and initially worked with Thomas Edison, the leading figure in the electrical industry. However, an irreconcilable contrast soon arose between the two. Edison advocated the superiority of direct current, while Tesla was convinced of the potential of alternating current as a more efficient system. This rivalry culminated in the famous War of Currents, a conflict not only technical, but also economic and media, which deeply marked the fate of the inventor. But Tesla was not just the inventor of electrical systems. He was a true prophet of energy, often considered a man at least a century ahead of his contemporaries. Among his most revolutionary inventions are the induction motor and the transmission of energy without wires, an idea that paved the way for modern wireless communication technologies. The radio, long attributed to Guglielmo Marconi, was actually a contested field in which Tesla rightfully claimed credit for some fundamental discoveries. In addition to these successes, he ventured into extremely advanced and sometimes disturbing experiments. Studies on high-energy rays, powerful electromagnetic fields, and theoretical designs for direct energy weapons. Today, a concept that seems to come straight out of a military science fiction novel. His laboratories in Colorado Springs and Long Island were known as the only places where the impossible was attempted, sending invisible energy waves into the ether for still unknown purposes. After his death from a heart attack on January 7, 1943, in a New York hotel room, or at least that's what is claimed by official sources, the story has taken a turn that is nothing short of enigmatic. He died alone, impoverished and forgotten, considered by many more of an eccentric than a genius. But in the hours and days after the incident, something clearly suspicious occurred. The United States government, with the direct involvement of the FBI, quickly intervened to seize all of his personal belongings, including notebooks, sketches, notes, and projects, many of which were then archived or simply disappeared into thin air. Among the seized documents, a reference to a project called Death Ray emerged, a supposed weapon capable of taking down entire armies from a distance with a beam of concentrated energy. This kind of technology, if it were real, could have revolutionized warfare and the global geopolitical balance. And what if the FBI feared that such discoveries could end up in the wrong hands? What if it was crucial to his disappearance? John Trump, uncle of the much more famous Donald Trump, a steam Massachusetts Institute of Technology engineer, was commissioned by the government to analyze the confiscated material. He officially concluded Tesla's documents contained nothing technically dangerous or especially innovative to exploit. But can we truly believe it? Speculation about what the genius left behind continues today. Some argue that he had managed to develop a method for transmitting free and unlimited electrical energy all over the planet, an energy revolution that could have changed the course of human history. Others hypothesize that he had invented a secret communication system, perhaps capable of connecting continents or even influencing natural and artificial phenomena on a global scale. Since it is certain that a substantial part of his work has been lost or remains hidden in the folds of history, like a secret guarded for years. That's why even today this man continues to fascinate, inspire conspiracy theories, and represent a symbol of unconventional genius, but also of occult power and scientific censorship. The question, which remains suspended like a flash in the night sky, is always the same. Was he just a scientist with ideas too big and advanced for his time, or a threat to the powers that be? Someone who could have radically changed the world and for this reason was systematically silenced. If so, the idea that his disappearance was not simply due to chance is not a hypothesis to be discarded a priori. Or at least that's what 1 million people around the world think. There have been many hypotheses. Adding to a definitive solution is difficult, if not impossible. Maybe he just died of a heart attack. That doesn't change the fact that the government intervened with inexplicable promptness to get their hands on his work, only to later conceal it from the public. His notes were really a hodgepodge of delusions and pseudoscientific hypotheses. I leave the hard judgment to you. Ettore Majorana. The second inventor I want to talk about is an Italian, one of the most brilliant physicists in our country, Ettore Majorana. Majorana, Panisperna, was not just any character. Born in Catania in 1906, he showed remarkable intelligence from an early age. He was regarded as one of the most brilliant and promising minds in physics of his era. He became part of the famous group of boys from Via Panisperna, a group of young Italian scientists led by Enrico Fermi, who in the 1930s revolutionized nuclear physics, laying the theoretical and experimental foundations for future discoveries in the field of atomic energy. Majorana, however, was much more than just a member of that group. His unique genius was troubled by an extremely introverted nature, almost at odds with his mind, making him mysterious and complex. In March 1938, after a long period of almost voluntary isolation, during which he progressively distanced himself from the academic world and society, he took up a chair in theoretical physics at the University of Naples, a decision that appeared to start a new chapter in his career and life, but ended with a dramatic and inexplicable twist. In fact, just a few days later, on March 25, 1938, he took a ferry from Palermo to Naples, and from that moment he disappeared into thin air. Before leaving, Ettore left 2 letters, one addressed to the director of the Physics Institute, the other to his family. In these letters, the physicist appeared to announce an extreme act, possibly a suicide, as a final farewell. But then, unexpectedly, a telegram arrived from him that contradicted his previous words. With an ambiguous, almost mysterious tone, he ordered everything to be canceled and assured that he would return soon, but alas, he never returned. His disappearance is an enigma wrapped in a shroud of mystery that has tormented those who have wanted to get to the bottom of it for many years. Later investigations and documents found no concrete evidence. The body was never found, and there were suspicions about what really happened during his journey in transit. Some documents even suggest that Majorana may never have boarded, or that someone perhaps took his place. From that moment on, his disappearance sparked endless speculation, theories, and even legends. One of the most common theories is suicide. Majorana, burdened by his brilliant but troubled mind, is believed to have ended his life. But this theory, though plausible, lacks definitive evidence. Others believe he disappeared voluntarily and planned his escape. He would have taken refuge in a remote place, seeking peace and anonymity, perhaps in a monastery or a religious community. Multiple accounts report seeing a man resembling Majorana among Carthusian monks or in remote parts of southern Italy. There are also more adventurous theories that see him taking refuge in South America under a false name in an attempt to start a new life away from everything and everyone. There are also more disturbing theories, like one suggesting involvement with the Nazi regime. Some scholars and mystery enthusiasts argue that he may have secretly collaborated with Hitler's Germany, attracted by the possibility of continuing his scientific research in total privacy, protected by the regime and away from the noise and risks of the Italian political situation. After the war, his legend grew, driven by new clues and mysterious reports. A confidential document from Italian intelligence spoke of an Italian professor who had taken refuge in Argentina, with characteristics corresponding to those of Majorana. In the following years, some witnesses claimed to have recognized the physicist in photographs taken in Venezuela. However, all these reports remained vague, never officially confirmed, and without tangible evidence. But what would have been the reason for this disappearance? One of the most credited versions is that Majorana would have realized the destructive consequences that his discoveries on the atom would have had, which later became the fundamental basis for the construction of the atomic bomb. For this reason, he would have chosen to vanish into the shadows and, in a way, give up his work. But can we trust this thesis, or is it just meant to silence more troubling ideas? Ettore Majorana, therefore, remains one of the greatest enigmas of Italian and world history, a man capable of challenging the laws of physics, enough to write fundamental pages of modern science, but perhaps also the very laws of reality. His disappearance remains a mystery that still captures the imagination of historians, scientists, and enthusiasts worldwide, leaving open the question of where the genius who vanished really ended up. Louis Le Prince? Imagine for a moment being on the verge of radically changing the entire world, having invented something so revolutionary, something that no one had ever even imagined before. An invention set to revolutionize art, communication, and entertainment, creating a new way to view and tell reality. Now also suppose that just at the moment when you are about to reveal this masterpiece to the world, you disappear into thin air, vanishing into the most total silence without leaving a trace. What happened to Louis Le Prince, the supposed real inventor of cinema, who vanished in 1890 under circumstances so mysterious and dark that they seemed to come straight out of a noir film? And all this even before cinema itself was officially born. Louis-Aimé Augustin Le Prince was a French inventor of eclectic origins, an absolute visionary in the field of emerging technologies of his time. In 1888, long before the more famous Lumiere brothers rose to the honors of history, he had already created a machine capable of recording moving images, creating what is today considered the first film in the world. His shots, like the very famous Round Hay Garden scene, date back to that year and represent the oldest filmed sequences ever found. Preceding the cinematograph presented by the Lumiere in 1895 by several years. In September 1890, he boarded a train in the city of Dijon, heading towards Paris, from where he would continue his journey to England to finally show his revolutionary invention to the public, to the scientific world. It was the long-awaited moment, the one in which he could enter history, credited with creating a new art that forever changed how we see reality. But something incredible happened. The inventor never reached his destination. He disappeared into thin air as if swallowed by the shadow. No witnesses, no body found. How can a man vanish from a train without leaving a trace? Police launched an investigation, but after months found no plausible explanation. Neither suicide nor voluntary escape seemed compatible with LePrince's state of mind. In fact, he was known for his enthusiasm and determination in wanting to reveal his machine to the world. At this point, the mystery deepens, leading to suspicions and theories verging on conspiracies. Who could have had an interest in stopping him? Some voices point to the Lumiere brothers themselves, who a few years later, in 1895, launched their cinematograph and gained worldwide recognition as the inventors of cinema, effectively overshadowing the name of LePrince. But suspicions persist. Another dark protagonist in this story is Thomas Edison, the famous American inventor known not only for his genius, but also for his ruthless protection of patents, and for the legal fights against anyone who threatened his interests. Edison was actually developing a similar technology and obtained the kinetoscope patent soon after his disappearance. This began a lengthy and controversial legal battle with LePrince's heirs, a dispute that could have rewritten the rules of history, but ended with a judicial victory in favor of Edison, thus consolidating his fame. Does all this sound like a series of coincidences to you? Or perhaps an invisible hand made the inventor disappear just to prevent them from receiving the recognition they expected as the first real director in the history of cinema? As if that wasn't enough, in 2003, a disturbing detail brought the matter back into the spotlight. In fact, a mugshot of a man who drowned in 1890 was found, whose face bore a striking resemblance to that of the famous inventor. However, no solid evidence ever confirmed this hypothesis, leaving that discovery as another piece of a puzzle that seems destined to remain incomplete. And so the figure of Louis LePrince has transformed into that of a ghost of cinema, a forgotten genius, perhaps deliberately made to disappear, sacrificed on the altar of economic interests and hidden powers, a mystery that still today shrouds the dawn of the seventh Mars in a shadow that is nothing short of disturbing. RUDOLFDIESEL. On September 29, 1913, Rudolf Diesel, the German engineer who revolutionized the world with his diesel engine invention. Indeed, he boarded the steamship Dresden, departing from the port of Antwerp, heading towards London, with a very unclear goal to participate in a crucial meeting with British investors. These were interested in a bold and innovative project that could forever change the fuel industry, applying the diesel engine not to oil, now dominated by the big oil giants, but to an alternative and sustainable fuel, vegetable oil. That idea, as much as it may seem today a precursor of modern renewable energies, represented at the time a real and dangerous threat to the consolidated interests of the powerful international companies that had long been monopolizing the global energy market, accumulating unprecedented economic and political power. Diesel, therefore, was not just an inventor, but a visionary who risked changing the rules of the game, questioning the hegemony of the multinationals in the sector. The very evening of his departure, after having dinner on board, Rudolf cordially greeted the crew of the Dresden, but that was his last appearance. The night passed without incident, but the next morning a disturbing discovery was made. The engineer's cabin was empty, the bed untouched as if no one had slept there. On the deck, near the railing, only his coat was found, carefully folded like a silent last message. 10 days passed before a fishing boat found a heavily decomposed body in the cold and dark North Sea. Some personal items found on it suggested it could indeed be Rudolf Diesel, but there was never a definitive confirmation. The news spread quickly, and the official version spoke of a probable suicide, a tragic and solitary decision of a man perhaps too overwhelmed by pressures and financial problems. But one detail left room for doubts and suspicions. Why would a man like Diesel, who had a potentially career-changing meeting ahead of him, decide to take his own life? right on the eve of that appointment? What sense did it make? Over the years, numerous conspiracy theories have tried to provide an alternative explanation to the mysterious disappearance. Among these, one of the most disturbing suggests the direct involvement of oil companies, terrified by the possibility that the diesel engine powered by vegetable oil could undermine their global economic dominance, with catastrophic consequences on their profits. Others argue that the German government of the time, in a climate of political tensions and impending wars, would have seen Diesel as a possible traitor, suspecting him of wanting to sell his technological innovation to enemy countries. Then there are the darker theories, which speak of a coordinated conspiracy among multiple powers, with the aim of silencing a man who perhaps knew too much, who represented a danger too great to be left free to act. To this day, more than a century after those mysterious days, the truth about the disappearance of Rudolf Diesel remains shrouded in mystery. No clear evidence has ever appeared. This extraordinary inventor remains shrouded in mystery and suspicion, which still fuel the curiosity and speculation of historians, mystery enthusiasts, and technology scholars. Simple speculations, or a disappearance all too convenient for those who wanted to put him out of play? At this point, I believe it's time to stop and reflect on what at first glance may seem like recurring patterns in these mysterious cases. There's a thin but disturbing red thread that seems to connect the disappearance of some of the most brilliant inventors in history. It's not just their extraordinary genius and the isolation in which they often lived, but rather what they were creating. Revolutionary inventions and technologies that, if revealed, could have drastically changed the global balance and shaken economic, military, and political power. Conspiracy theories suggest these disappearances aren't accidents or voluntary escapes, but the work of specific people or entities, unscrupulous rivals willing to physically eliminate the competition. Governments, secret services, multinationals, organizations that operate in the shadows, and that had every interest in preventing certain technologies from seeing the light of day. Consider those who attempted to invent free energy generators, devices that produce unlimited energy without using fuel. If such an invention were real and functional, it would undermine the entire global economy, based on oil, gas, and fossil fuels. It's hard to believe that billion-dollar energy giants would just stand by without saying anything. Don't you think? There's more. The model's tendency to repeat itself is even more disturbing. These inventors were often loners, misunderstood by academia, yet able to think outside the box. Misunderstood geniuses, vulnerable and unprotected, lacked official funding, but had dangerous ideas. Some speak of a silent cleanup, a global operation, to eliminate any possible threat to the established order. Some suggest entities like the CIA, KGB, or private arms industry groups may be involved. Regardless of the truth, we can't deny that many brilliant minds have vanished under unclear circumstances, and too often their inventions seem to have ended up in a black hole from which nothing concrete has ever emerged. Upon reflection, the real danger was not the invention, but that someone dared to change the world. But hold on, because even in the face of more or less credible hypotheses like these, there are those who simply cannot accept them. Those who consider these alleged conspiracies in a completely different light. Even today, it's time to give the floor to the skeptics. Every mystery, no matter how fascinating and dark, needs to be looked at also through the eyes of rationality. It's easy to get carried away by conspiracy theories, stories of secret societies, or governments that file brilliant increases to prevent the spread of too dangerous inventions. But in all this, what would be the opinion of the scientists? Those who, while recognizing the oddities in some cases, do not believe at all that there is an orchestrated plan behind them. Those who question the conspiracy theory start from a fixed point. Coincidence, it's not a coincidence. That means just because an inventor disappeared shortly after announcing a revolutionary discovery, it doesn't necessarily mean that someone made him disappear. Coincidences exist, and human history is full of them. For instance, consider Nikola Tesla. By his death in 1943, he had lost scientific credibility and lived in isolation. His last projects were often more speculation than real innovation. Skeptics point out that the famous documents seized by the American government may contain more rough theories than revolutionary weapons, and that the intervention of the authorities was driven by the war paranoia of the time, not by any real dangerous content. What about Rudolf Diesel? Official accounts say Diesel was deeply in debt and facing a personal crisis. Many suggest it may have been suicide or an accident. No hitman sent by the oil lobbies, just a man in trouble. The position of the skeptics, after all, is this: reality is often less spectacular than we would like. Inventors are human beings. They can be fragile, vulnerable, and sometimes victims of tragic circumstances. Believing that every disappearance necessarily has a hidden puppeteer behind it risks making us lose sight of the real drama, the human one. The question remains, where does skepticism stop and the unexplainable begin? We may never know for sure what truly happened to these inventors. Yet lingering like a ghostly trace is the sense that some discoveries are too unsettling to reveal. But what do you think? Is it just coincidences and conspiracy theories inspired by paranoia? Or are these disappearances really more mysterious than they wanted us to believe? Let me know your opinion in a comment. The Unexplainable podcast is an original format, written and directed by Luca Perella, sound design by Matteo Di Alessandro. If you like this episode, leave a like, subscribe to the channel on YouTube, or share it with your friends. Greetings, and see you at the next appointment with the unexplainable. Thanks to everyone.